Good to go. Nationwide 90 FM, Miss Kitty Live, the voice of coffee on your radio. And of course, you know it is a YM Monday. If you're just tuning in, a pleasant afternoon to you. He is bright, he is affable, and of course, a very careful speaker who has a passion for shielding us from the cretins that walk by day and by night. This gentleman is global. He has run covert operations across the world to crack down on drug trafficking, terrorism, and espionage. He has worked on the attempted kidnapping of Victoria Beckham and her children when David Beckham was at Manchester United. He also worked on blackmail cases, one involving a German national who placed bomb devices in supermarkets across Germany and was blackmailing the Deutsche Bank in London to hand over all the cash to him. Of course, the Shield and his team thwarted the attack and nobody was killed or seriously injured. Straight from London City to Scotland Yard to Eastern Europe and then to the little island of Jamaica, where he now calls home. I have the privilege of speaking with former Deputy Commissioner of Police and now owner of Shields Crime and Security Consultants, Mr. Mark Shields, our very own Sherlock Holmes. Good afternoon to you, Mark. Welcome to Miss Kitty Live. How are you?
Good afternoon. You did a lot of research.
Yes.
I was sitting here quite shocked. I'd forgotten half of that stuff.
Yes. Miss Kitty knows how to get to the juicy stuff.
You Googled me.
Yes,
a lot.
I did. And you see, a lot of people can Google people and get information on them, even the location of their homes, where the schools their children attend. And so it's like Google also provides an avenue or a medium through which a lot of people can find out information about you. Is that good or bad, Mark Shields?
It can be a little bit of both. Frankly, if you're going to go away on a vacation, and people love to take a picture of their food, they like to take a picture with their friends, etc. And it tells everybody on the planet where they are at that moment. And that could mean that your house is empty, your apartment's empty, or it could be telling people where you are. And if they're going to target you for some reason, it could be a risk. So on the one hand, social media is a wonderful thing that I love to use. We all love to use it, but I think you do have to have some sense around how you use it and think about it rationally in terms of is what I'm tweeting or posting on Facebook, is that going to have a negative effect, or could it have a negative effect on me now? So, for example, if you go on vacation and you want to post some pictures for your friends, maybe do it a week after you get back.
True.
Don't do it instantly so that the whole planet knows where you are. That would be my advice.
See, young grasshopper. That's what. So post after the fact, not necessarily during.
Absolutely.
Because you're exposing yourself without even recognizing it. But I mean, Mark, a lot of people, we've seen you on TV. We've heard your voice on Nationwide 90 FM. We've read your articles in the paper. You're a very visible and a very vocal figure regarding security. And coming from, Europe to Jamaica, having gone through and have such a body of work, why choose Jamaica? How did you get to Jamaica?
Well, long story. It was nearly 15 years ago. I came here with a specific purpose. I was asked to come here. I was working at Scotland Yard, conducted a particular investigation, and that lasted, I thought, 2 weeks, then it was 2 months, and then it was nearly 2 years. And then I had a phone call from the then Minister of National Security, Dr. Peter Phillips.
Yes.
So you can blame him for me being here partly.
Yes.
Dr. Peter Phillips called me and he said, Mr. Shields, we'd like to see you come to the office. So I thought, okay, so I went to the M&S, Ministry of National Security, and they offered me a job. And I wasn't expecting it at all. I was quite shocked. And we discussed it, and eventually I agreed, yes, I would love to come here.
Yes.
And again, I thought, well, I'll be here for a year or two, see my contract out, and then I'm going. But then I met somebody called Emily Crooks, who happens to work on the radio and TV.
Yes.
And the rest, as they say, is history.
Yes.
So,
and now you're a naturalized Jamaican.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in terms of, you're very, as I said, vocal about fighting crime, and you speak openly and vocally about the ills and also the good parts of the Jamaica Constabulary Force, of the Jamaica Defence Force, and just security in general in Jamaica. How is fighting crime overseas or in Europe, in England, different from fighting crime here?
Well, the basics of fighting crime and the basics of investigating crime are the same in that you learn to do certain things. It's a bit like when you go to court. You learn how to cross-examine. You learn various processes. In anything that you do, if you're a doctor, you learn certain things. But you haven't, as a doctor, always got the necessary medicine or the apparatus that you may have at Bart's Hospital in London. You may not have it in KPH in Kingston. But the principles of much of what we do is the same. And unfortunately, the Jamaica Constabulary Force is still deficient in many of the things that it has. But I'm glad that you mentioned, I try to spend as much time bigging up the Jamaica Constabulary Force for the work that they do, because it is a tough job. It's a tough job where men are carrying AK-47s and M16s, and as we saw the other week in that post about the robbery in Maypen, you know, there's some serious criminals here. And unfortunately at the moment we're still in a situation where I don't think we have sufficient resources or the capacity at all times to deal with some of those issues. And you probably would have seen in your Googling, I'm always going on about some of the basics in policing. When somebody's arrested and charged for crime, we have a law that enables their fingerprints to be taken on every occasion. There is a law that allows us to take their DNA sample on every occasion. Now, it's 100,000 people arrested a year on average. That's 100,000 investigative opportunities. The police do take DNA samples and fingerprints from crime scenes, but if you do not take those from the suspects that are arrested, then
you can't cross-match it.
Exactly. So there are little things like that. Police pay is another thing. I know the Commissioner mentioned this recently. There is no doubt at all that I would share his view that the police should be made a special case. When you consider them on the front line and doing the work that
risking
they do,
their lives,
risking their lives day in and day out, they are a special case. So regardless of all the negativity and all the bad stuff that we read about them regularly, focus on the fact the higher percentage are good cops and they do a difficult job. They should be paid.
Absolutely.
And what's happening is we're getting basically a cop drain, if I can call it that. Because they leave when they've been trained and they go and work in the Bahamas.
Cayman.
They go to Cayman. They go to Barbados. And I heard a conversation with a previous commissioner who said to me, when I go to commissioners' conferences, the other commissioners say, thanks for your PC Jones from Kingston Central, because he's the best cop we've ever had. And you hear about the standard of cops that are being exported to other islands. And it's because we're not retaining them, because we train them, but we're just not paying them a living wage. So they can go and earn more money working in Walmart in Miami, stacking shelves, or a security
than
dodging
bullets.
Exactly.
So and when you think about it, okay, I'm going to go to Walmart because I'm just doing the job and I'm not, my life isn't at risk, and I'm earning money. I can buy my own home and I can do what I have to do. So I know, and that is why I often, I mean, there is good and bad in every sphere of life. There are good doctors, bad doctors, good lawyers, bad lawyers, good media practitioners, bad media practitioners, and the list goes on. So there are good police officers, there are bad police officers. But I dare say that there are more good officers than there are bad ones.
100% correct. 100% correct. In fact, I was with, I went to a meeting some months ago with a whole bunch of senior officers from across the country. I was lucky to be in this particular meeting. I was invited and I was impressed by some of the work that they're doing. My interaction with them was excellent. And it is such a shame, you know, a real crashing shame that so often we hear about the cop that's been found guilty of murder or involved in an armed robbery or a contract killing, and it just detracts from all of the good work they're doing. So a lot of work needs to be done. We need to weed out the bad cops, which we're beginning to do, in order that we can create an environment where we have a police service that we can be proud of. And part of that transformation, I really believe, is paying them a decent wage.
I definitely agree with that. But in terms of choosing crime and to fight crime, Mark, normally, you know, people don't get so deep in it. I mean, the espionage bit of it and all of this terrorism and, you know, where did your love and interest or passion for crime fighting, where did that start?
That's a very good question. I guess just from a very young age, I can remember being stopped by the police when I was a teenager. I can remember that experience. I'd had a bit of a row with my parents, and I was in a huff, and I took off on my bike, on my push bike, and I was riding around a car park and got stopped. These police just came out from everywhere, took me off the bike, and they thought I was a thief trying to break into people's cars. And I thought, Well, I wasn't, and I proved that I was okay and everything else. But that was my first experience. I thought, Mike, that's not a bad job. That's quite an interesting job. And I think most of my career, once I joined, has been on the proactive side of crime investigation.
Yes.
I think it's far more fundamentally important to catch a criminal before he or she commits the crime,
Yes.
as opposed to the resources that are required once the crime has been committed.
Yes.
And in this country, there are huge opportunities, I still believe. I don't think we are necessarily intelligence-led enough.
Yes.
I don't think we are proactive enough in terms of covert policing.
Yes.
And there are many tactics that I wouldn't discuss on this show
Very well.
that can be used
Yes.
in order to reduce crime, because criminals hate being caught.
Yes.
And apart from the DNA fingerprint thing, which we've already discussed, it's the not knowing whether or not the police are there watching and listening.
Yes.
And the law that we have, in terms of the proportionality, the legality, and whether or not it's necessary, all of those factors are here that we could use it. I'll give you an example. I think a lot more could be done around extortion.
Yes, tell us how. Because that plagues a lot of
does.
taxi operators, bus
Absolutely.
operators,
Absolutely.
and it drains them. And I know they're sick of it, but they feel like they can't do anything about it because it is do or die.
Absolutely. And so we don't expect the taxi operators and the bus drivers to come in and make the witness statement, because they know what could happen.
Yes.
So I think the police have to be creative in ways in which they can proactively go after that information, and we should be seeing more convictions of those for extortions. It doesn't take away the fact there's a massive trial going on for a gang at the moment, which we're aware of.
Yes.
And there are other gang-busting operations, but at the lower level, I'd like them to be in fear that every time they go out and try to extort money, they don't know whether they're doing it from the police. I'd say that much.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. I asked earlier, Mark, I prefaced our discussion with, do you feel safe? Do you feel safe in Jamaica?
Yeah, I feel safe in Jamaica all of the time, but sometimes I will admit I feel intimidated.
Yes.
One of the things I absolutely hate doing is driving down Hope Road to Devon House.
Yes.
And I get invaded by these guys with their
Squeegees.
Squeegees.
Yes.
I absolutely hate it. So what I will do is I will plan my route carefully, and sometimes I will even make the illegal right turn into Kingsway. I'm one of those people, I plead guilty, I've not been caught yet,
Yeah.
but sometimes I will do that because I cannot be bothered being cussed by
But Mark,
those guys.
but there we go again. Shouldn't there be something? Shouldn't the police be able to do something? Shouldn't there be a law to remove them from the road, from intimidating, from pestering, from being a bother to law-abiding citizens, so that if Mark wants to drive down Hope Road, I don't have to take the longer route all the way around just to avoid people that I am not obligated to give my money. If you wipe my windshield and I so choose to give you, I so choose. But it shouldn't be that I am bombarded or intimidated, and that in and of itself is a problem.
I think it's a massive problem, and I think it's probably not as bad for me, because I've heard women have been through some really awful experiences both there and in other areas. Yes, it's a priority, and I've always talked about this sort of zero tolerance approach to everything. I don't like the disorder here. For all the things I love about this country, I absolutely loathe and detest disorder.
Yes.
I hate the way people drive on the roads, as you guys do as well. The taxi drivers cutting us up, the squeegee washers, and some of the other things, even men just deciding, well, they need a pee and they urinate at the side of the road, and all of these things that we do not see in other places, and somehow we need to get to grips with that, because if you can get to grips with this lower criminality and disorder, crime and disorder, then things will start to get better. Unfortunately, though, at the moment, the police, again, they have their priorities. They cannot be everywhere all of the time. And somehow we need to get to a system whereby we educate our people to behave better, to drive better.
Behaviour change,
Exactly, and that's going to take a lot of time. But education goes hand in hand with enforcement. It can't be just the big stick.
Yes,
it
but
has
I think,
to be
and
education.
as you said that, Mark, I think consistency is the problem that we have. So, for example, we come out with I remember there was this big campaign about removing the tints from cars, taking out the radios, taking out the DVDs, and then it's like, okay, this week it's, oh my God, and zero tolerance. And then by next week, it's back in again. And it's back to the same old. So for me, I don't think necessarily we have an enforcement problem. We have a consistency problem. And then, so it's like, it's 9-day talk. And yeah, man, let them kill up themselves. Yeah, man. Let them talk. Because by next week, we're good again. And we're just back to the same old.
I think that's absolutely 100% spot on, because we hear zero tolerance on cabs that are not supposed to have completely blacked out windows.
Yes.
That's against the law.
Yes.
And then for a few weeks, you might even see on TV where they stop all the taxis
Yes.
and they peel it off, but they're back again.
Yes.
And you cannot see inside that cab. You cannot see out from the cab. So if something is happening to you within the cab, then you are done for, because
Yes.
someone could be holding a gun to your head and no one can see it because the taxi
It's
is completely
so,
blacked
yeah.
out. I don't see that should be a problem. That's enforceable, and probably we need stronger laws to enable the police to remove it. But the law is already there.
Yes.
This is often the problem, that we go through a process of enacting new laws,
Yes.
which is good in some cases, but let's get those laws that we already have in place
Working. Yes.
Absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about, because when you look at, crime and criminality is everywhere in the world, okay? So we're not saying that, oh my God, Jamaica is like the only place in the world where there is crime. But I think for a small island, it is too much.
Well, certainly. Well, we know that the murder rate, I think it's one of the highest in the world. I think we're ranking 3rd at the moment.
Wow.
So we have a massive problem with murder and violent crime.
Yes.
And violent crime isn't always just about gang on gang. It's also
Domestic
there's a
violence.
domestic violence problem, which is another whole area that the poor police have to deal with, because, as you know, there have to be enforcers, there have to be traffic cops, and they have to be social workers as well, and involved in conflict resolution. There are so many tasks which they have to conduct. But violence is a major issue. But I think that, again, comes back to enforcement, yes, but it's about educating, about having families that understand some real true values of teaching people how to communicate with each
Yes.
other and not to resort to either the machete or
Yes.
the gun in order that they
Resolve
get
their
through
issues.
and resolve the issue.
Is
Yeah.
Jamaica too far gone, Mark? Should the Queen just call us back and say, come, my child, because since the independence, you've not used it properly. Come, my child.
I keep calling her, but she's not asking me back. So,
Yeah.
anyway, she's got Mr. Trump at the moment.
She's
She's got the president there. She's got her own problems
Yes.
at the moment. No, I think that things are getting better.
Really?
I
Where,
do.
Mark?
I do.
Where?
I'm sorry, but I do. I know
Like on
people-
Balmoral Avenue?
I think that, all right, we look at the murder rate, and there's no doubt that last year was a good year, but we've seen over many years fluctuations, increases in murder. I think the trend is going to be down if we do everything that we're supposed to do.
Okay.
That would include, as there has been an increase in the use of CCTV, still not enough at the moment, but you've started to see the cameras from Jamaica Eye. The NWA have their cameras up now. People are buying more systems,
Yes.
which is something I would encourage them
Yes.
to do. People have to look after themselves, so they have to rely on technology as well as on just the cop on the street or on the security company. There's a lot that people can do. So, yeah, things are not great. And as I said, from the total disorder, which I despise on the roads, and sort of crime and disorder generally, things are not good. But I do believe that in time things will get better. I'm very optimistic. Because if I wasn't, then frankly I would buy the one-way ticket. I would.
Yes.
Because if I feel that this is a lost cause,
Yes.
then I would leave. I'd have no doubt about that. But I'm still optimistic, and I want to stay, and I want things to get better.
Well, if you're the expert and you're saying that, well, I'm guided by what you're saying. We're talking to Mark Shields this afternoon. He is the former Deputy Commissioner of Police, and he is the owner of Shields Crime and Security Consultants. Many security teams, and I got to tell you, he's been working on lots of big cases overseas, and he is here helping to fight crime and develop methodologies as to how to deal with, how to treat with crime, so that Jamaica can truly be the paradise that it can be. So, Mark, in terms of our own safety, as we had said before, aforementioned, that obviously the police cannot be everywhere. What can we do to mitigate and manage the risk? What can we do in our own way as, men and women, as citizens, to minimize our exposure to violence, to crime, and to criminality?
wherever you live, whether you're living in London, New York or Kingston, Jamaica, we all have a personal responsibility to look after ourselves. We can't give that over to the state and expect the state to do everything for us.
Yes.
We have to think about a personal risk. And personal risk often involves personal choices.
Yes.
Choices that we make about our lifestyle, how we live our lives, where we go, when we go out, how much we drink, whether we drink ourselves almost...
To us stupor.
Exactly,
yes.
or you stay sensible. Planning when you go out, planning your life, ensuring that, as we said about social media, if you're going to go to the North Coast for the weekend, don't tell the whole planet that you're there when you live in Kingston, because the chances are, guess what? Someone's going to see that, and what they're going to do, they could break into your house.
Yes.
You've got to look after yourself. I hate living behind grills, but grills is one basic aspect, but people need to have proper security at home, security at the office. They need, wherever possible, buy a CCTV system. If you can afford it, you can get a basic system for a home for about $60,000, including labour.
Installation.
Which, your listeners might say, wow, $60,000. But in terms of prevention, as I mentioned earlier, criminals hate being identified.
Yes.
So if you have a system and people see that you have a system, they will go elsewhere because they do not want to go where the cameras are. So there's that. Car security is another big thing. We talked about bad driving. Try not to get involved in the road rage, which I sometimes nearly do, and I always have to check myself. Just let it happen, because you're going to live longer if you don't get involved in the road rage thing. When you drive your car, stop using your mobile phone, your cell phone. It will kill you in a number of ways. One is you could have a crash because you're too busy trying to look at a WhatsApp message. And secondly, you're being distracted not only from driving, but from the environment around you.
Yes.
So therefore, you're at risk from carjacking. If the window's down, you might be at risk of someone actually snatching your phone or snatching your handbag or other personal effects. So there are other things you can do. It's about being careful, being sensible.
And
being
alert.
So boring, I know, but it's the truth. Unfortunately, you have to be slightly boring to stay alive longer. If you have a reckless life, then expect reckless things to happen.
Hold that thought right there. Talking to Mark Shields right here on Miss Kitty Live on a Wire Monday. We're talking about security. Do you feel safe in Jamaica? And of course, ways that we can help to mitigate crime and criminality. And of course, how we can protect ourselves, our children, our family, and our homes. This is Miss Kitty Live on Nationwide 90 FM. Nationwide 90 FM, Miss Kitty Live. We're going on till 5 o'clock today. I do have here on a Wire Monday, Mr. Mark Shields with me. And I got to tell you, we're having a very spirited and very informative discussion as about crime and, of course, protecting ourselves, ways that we can mitigate those circumstances in which we are exposed to crime and violence. He, of course, is the former Deputy Commissioner of Police and the owner of Shields Crime and Security Consultant. So, Mark, before we went to the break, we're talking about social media. We're talking about ways that, getting the CC camera. And though it costs $60,000, but when you think about $60,000 as opposed to your life, really and truly, it is a worthwhile investment. In terms of the taxis on the road, Mark, a lot of people commute, and some taxi often sometimes feature in crimes, persons being kidnapped, and so on. How can they treat with that?
Well, I think there are two parts to that. Certainly, I've said to you today, I think that police have to be consistent in terms of enforcing the law around taxis and buses, because we see just some of the, from dash cams and from people's phones, some of the really terrible driving that goes on. I think that personally, getting a taxi can be a risk, because we've had experiences before where taxi drivers have been involved in abduction and rape. Not all taxi drivers, taxi drivers, I'm not getting at all of you, but some of you out there would behave in that sort of way in terms of abduction, robbery, etc. So my advice is, if you can stick with the taxi company that you know and the taxi driver that you know and have got to know, use that person. Don't take random taxis if you can at all help it. And look at the vehicle, because some of them, if they haven't got the proper plate, they're not proper taxis. And you know what that means? They're not insured, which means if they go through a red light and drive bad and you end up with a broken neck or a neck brace at least or a broken leg, guess what? No insurance money,
Yes.
nothing at all.
Yes.
So it's in your own interest to ensure that you use licensed taxis that will hopefully be insured.
Yes.
Don't use all of these road taxis.
And how can the taxi operators protect themselves, because they too are at risk from the commuters as well?
Take the tint off the window.
Yes.
Let us see what's going on inside your cab, because you're absolutely right. It works both ways.
Yeah.
If that tint is so dark, which is illegal anyway, it means we cannot see what's happening. So if two young men get in the back of that cab and hold a gun to the head of the taxi driver, say, give me your money, etc., etc., then of course we can't see it. So it works both ways.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting at the taxi drivers, although they're not my
At all.
favourite people.
Yes, at all.
As I've
Because to all the taxi operators who work under very strenuous conditions sometimes as well. But of course, we're in the new age of crime, and criminals are getting more sophisticated, Mark, and they're using technology to their advantage. How can the police and security teams stay on top of it so we can suppress the crime as best as possible?
Well, we've spoken a lot about general crime, about petty crime, and about crime and disorder, but we haven't mentioned, for example, the lottery scamming.
Yes.
That is in Westmoreland, all the way across Hanover and into St James. I went to a meeting last week where I spoke to a number of law enforcement officers from the United States and other practitioners, and I was shocked to hear that the lottery scam is still a huge problem. We don't hear about it that much still. And despite the fact that we have partnerships between the Jamaica Constabulary Force, US law enforcement and others, it is still a major problem and something that we have to look to. The other thing, of course, is cybercrime, which is a growing crime, and Jamaicans are very bright, very savvy with technology, and so we have a percentage of those increasing that cybercrime problem. Which means you have to protect yourself. You have to ensure that when you open emails, if it says it's from Miss Kitty, that it is from Miss Kitty and not Miss Catty.
Yes.
Because you changed the R to an A.
Hey, yes.
And then, you got this, please send me some money. And the sort of thing
Yes.
goes on, the phishing
Yes.
and the scamming. So it's really important.
Don't be so gullible.
No,
don't be so
gullible.
quick.
Look after yourself.
Yes.
This goes back to that first point. Risk increases if you don't look after yourself and plan properly. So it really is important.
So in terms of the numbers, in terms of the latest crime figures, Mark, what are they looking like, and what do you make of them?
Well, I looked at that just before I came in. Clearly, murder is still far too high.
What are the numbers?
Well, at the moment, we've got murder at it's down 7% on last year, which is good news.
Okay.
But St James is still up 45%. I think the biggest shock for me, I looked at Kingston Central.
Yes.
And murder is up by 75% there.
Wow.
75%. Kingston Eastern is up 36%. So we still have these pockets and areas where, when there's been police activity, the number goes down. For example, before the state of emergency, on this occasion, St James, now it's St James, Westmoreland and Hanover. In St James, the murder is down to 45%, but it was up at 80%. So clearly the police and the army are doing something right.
Yes.
And there's a big debate going on, which in some ways I've been part of, about whether or not the state of emergency is a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I think my question is it sustainable, and is it a crime plan? Because I'm saying, as you spoke about the big stick earlier, I need for our citizens to behave without the presence of the police and the soldiers, because they can't always be planted there. Exactly. And even in a state of emergency, there are certain fundamental human rights that are abrogated that we have to be careful about. So yes, I'm all for the SOE to catch the criminals, because we need to get them. But even as a citizen, I might get caught in the dragnet. And because of the SOE, there are certain human rights and constitutional rights that are abrogated and abridged during that time. So it cannot be that it is a forever and ever plan.
It shouldn't be forever and ever and ever. And all of the plans that you've mentioned in terms of, enforcement, we've talked about education, we haven't mentioned, but of course there's social intervention as well, and creating jobs and all of that. But the fundamental right that you have is the right to life.
Yes.
And I want you and me to be able to go out at night and not have the risk of being killed or extorted or any of those other things.
Yes.
And when I go about my business, I don't mind being stopped, because I am basically I'm an innocent person.
Yes.
I think I'm a good person.
Yes.
So when I get in my car, I'm not thinking about trafficking guns or firearms or doing any other bad stuff or extorting money. I go out with that purpose. So I feel reassured when I go to St James, for example, and I'm stop checked. That's fine by me, and I will go through that process. We have to get the balance right, and I think this is the point that we're making. Yes, we have fundamental human rights to be able to go about our business. But before states of emergency, when the murder rate in St James was going through the roof, that area in itself was probably one of the most dangerous areas that was not a war zone in the world. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
And we got that back down last year with minus, was it 45% murders or whatever it was. So it works. But no, of course, we cannot look at state of emergency as one methodology to solve crime, because if you think that, you are sadly mistaken.
Yes.
We have to do
Because
all of the other things at the same time.
Yes.
Education, employment,
Yes.
social intervention, they are equally as important.
Yes.
Policing, enforcement, very important. Redesigning or re-establishing mobile reserve into something else, into a crack firearms unit, is important. But at the same time, we need effective community policing to support that. Different sorts of policing working at the same time, not one or the other.
What's your most memorable achievement since you've been here?
In policing?
Yes, policing. Yeah.
I think it's hard to put my finger on one particular thing.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the time I had here
Yes.
in the police. 5 years, but you know what? This year is my 10th anniversary since I left in September 2009, and it feels like a few years ago.
Right, it looks like yesterday.
Yep.
Yes, because I do remember you on TV. I'm like 2009. Wow.
Exactly. 10 years.
Well, what's your most gratifying moment in being here in Jamaica and also just being in law enforcement?
I just think actually being able to either introduce methodologies and things that were not being done here, that's been very satisfying. There were many small things, but I'll give you one example. Within a year, we introduced colour photography. And believe it or not, back in 2005, photographs at crime scenes were being taken in black and white on the old paper. And we introduced colour photography. The ballistics is now in. That's not all of my doing. The way we investigated murders. There are lots of things that we did together. I never, ever, promise you, I will never claim credit for something that I did. It's about a team effort. It's about senior officers, cops on the ground, everybody working together, and that's what we need to see going forward. So I take away a lot of satisfaction from that, but I also share frustration because I just wish that things that I wanted to do could have moved faster than they actually moved. That would be my sad side to it.
Wow. Well, I do hope that in some way, shape or form, even through your security company and through your consultancy, they can call upon your expertise, call on your knowledge. And so together we can work as a cohesive whole, because it is for all of us to benefit from a safer Jamaica, a cleaner Jamaica, a disciplined Jamaica. Absolutely. And it is for us all to benefit, because if it is that we want Jamaica to be the place to live, do business and raise families, then we have to create an environment where we are happy, we are able to grow our families, and then people outside will want to come. But let me just take this opportunity to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, Mark Shields, for coming to talk to me, and of course for all that you have done and all that you have given and your tireless and selfless work. And thank you for being a part of the Nationwide family. You know what I mean? Thank you so very much for all that you've done, and I do wish you all the best, and I do hope that you will continue to strive and thrive in as many ways as possible. Thank you so much. Mark Shields right here on Miss Kitty Live, former Deputy Commissioner of Police and the owner of Shields Crime and Security Consultants. This is Nationwide 90 FM, and you're locked and loaded to Miss Kitty Live.